All right, so we're diving deep into Renaissance music today, and I gotta say, some of your questions have me pretty stoked.
Yeah, the Renaissance period. It's just fascinating.
Okay, so one listener wants to know how a composer became a European celebrity before social media.
Yep.
What was up with that?
Right, before Instagram and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what exactly is a madrigal? Why were people like so obsessed with them? I gotta admit, I'm a little fuzzy on that myself.
Oh, madrigals are fantastic. We'll definitely get to those.
Awesome. So let's break down what made Renaissance music so unique and how it kind of mirrored all the crazy changes happening back then, culturally and everything.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's really cool is how Renaissance music was a total shift from, the medieval period, like a real turning point.
Okay, I can definitely hear the difference between like, say, Gregorian chants,
Yeah.
right? And what I think of as like classic Renaissance music, but what actually changed musically.
Well, picture this. A Gregorian chant. Very simple, just a single melody, almost hypnotic, right?
Yeah, okay, I get that.
Now, imagine that melody being joined by other voices, each kind of weaving its own path. Sometimes they echo each other, sometimes they go in totally different directions, but they always, work together.
Ooh, I like that, weaving together.
Right. And that's what we call imitative polyphony. It creates this much richer, more vibrant texture. And then you have harmony becoming super important, adding depth and emotion to the music. It's like if medieval music was a simple line drawing, Renaissance music was like a whole painting, bursting with color and dimension.
Whoa, that's a great way to put it. It's like going from black and white to full-on Technicolor. And speaking of revolutions, we got to talk about the printing press.
Oh, yeah. The printing press changed everything.
I mean, before that, every single piece of music had to be copied by hand. Talk about slow and expensive.
Not to mention all the mistakes that could happen.
Exactly. But then, boom, sheet music could be printed like super quickly and accurately, and it was way cheaper. Music basically went viral.
It really did spread like wildfire. Think about it. A talented composer in, say, Italy could become famous in England or France within a couple of years.
So that's how composers like, what's his name, Josquin?
Josquin de Prez?
Yeah, Josquin de Prez, how he became so famous, like a superstar.
Absolutely. His music just traveled everywhere thanks to the printing press, and he became one of the first composers to have that international fame. It was unheard of before.
That's wild. So, like, before the printing press, most composers were basically anonymous.
Pretty much. Their music was tied to, a specific location. Josquin's fame really shows the power of this new technology to completely change how people experienced and consumed music.
It's kind of like the first, like, top 40 chart or something.
Yes.
But it wasn't just about technology, right? There was this whole new way of thinking about the world, too. Humanism. People were, like, way more focused on individual expression and feelings. Did that affect the music at all?
Totally. Humanism put the individual and their feelings front and center, and you can just hear it in the music. It became more expressive, more personal, and secular music, music outside of the church, that really started flourishing. And that brings us to the madrigal.
Ah, yes. The madrigal. Our listeners specifically asked about those. So what's the deal with madrigals? Why were they, like, such a big deal?
Okay, so think of madrigals like musical poetry.
Okay, musical poetry.
Right. They were often set to, love poems or like light, witty verses. And the music itself was super playful, full of this thing called word painting.
Word painting, what's that?
It's where the music actually imitates the meaning of the words. So, like, if the words talk about a bird flying high, the music would have all these high notes to match.
Oh, I get it. Like, if the words were about something sad, the music would sound like melancholy.
Exactly. Madrigals were like the social activity among the Renaissance elite. Imagine, groups of friends all hanging out in a fancy salon, singing these intricate, beautiful pieces together.
It's like Renaissance karaoke night for the fancy folks.
Exactly. It was a way to entertain each other, show off their musical skills, and just bond over shared artistic experiences.
I love that. But it wasn't all just love songs and parties, right? I mean, the church was still a major force in music. What was going on with sacred music during all the, like, upheavals of the Reformation and Counter-Reformation?
Oh, yeah, the church was definitely still a major patron of the arts, and the music totally reflected all those religious and political struggles going on, like with the Reformation led by Martin Luther. They challenged the Catholic Church, right? And one of their big changes was emphasizing congregational singing in local languages instead of Latin.
So, like, hymns.
Yeah, exactly, hymns. Simple, powerful melodies that everyone could sing together. And the Catholic Church, well, they responded by kind of doubling down on their traditions, emphasizing elaborate polyphony and sticking with Latin for their services.
Whoa, it was like a musical duel between the Protestants and the Catholics.
In a way, yeah. It was a fascinating time for sacred music.
Totally. And it wasn't just voices, right? What about instrumental music? Was that changing and evolving too?
Absolutely. New instruments were being invented and old ones were being improved. This meant composers had way more options to create even more expressive and virtuosic music. Like, imagine the lute, the viola da gamba, and the recorder all playing together.
Oh, wow, a whole new sound.
Right, a totally new soundscape was emerging, and we see the rise of like instrumental ensembles, playing music specifically written for instruments rather than just adapting vocal pieces.
Okay, so all this new music, these new instruments, all these musicians, someone had to pay for it all, right?
You're talking about patrons. They were essential. Kings and queens, wealthy merchants, the church, they all commissioned pieces from composers.
So, like, if a duke wanted to celebrate a big wedding, he'd hire a composer to write something special.
Exactly. Or a wealthy merchant might want a piece to, show off his sophisticated taste.
It's kind of like having a private concert for your own personal party. So this whole patronage system meant that the music was really shaped by, like, the tastes of the people in power.
Absolutely. The desires of those who could afford to commission music had a huge influence on what kind of music was actually created. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Okay, this has been awesome. We've covered so much, from, like, Gregorian chants to printing presses, madrigals to fancy patrons. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up this Renaissance journey?
It's just incredible to think about how much the printing press, this one invention, revolutionized music. Like, what would music history even look like without it? And I think a good question to ponder is, how will technology continue to shape the music of our future? Food for thought, right?
Totally. It's like the printing press was the big disruptor back then, but what's the next big thing that's going to change everything again?
It's exciting to think about.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with me today. Renaissance music is really amazing.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. And to all our listeners, keep those questions coming. We love exploring with you.